All right, it is the first day of Wild Wonder, and right now I'm going to start with hopefully the series. I'll be able to keep it up every day, but basically just a review of what happened for people who weren't able to make it to all the classes. You can see here I checked off all the classes. I need to check off the backstage as well, and all of the. I also went to all of the sort of social events and the keynotes. So I'm going to briefly talk about them. Then I'm going to give some tips for how to make the most out of it, a couple things that I learned, and some more stuff like that. So if you have any questions about the conference, go ahead and post them into the comments. I see Jean is already commenting there. And if you're too tired, I totally understand. If you've been at the conference all day, then that is totally fine. But if you missed something or you just want to know what you missed, this is a good chance to find out about that. One thing I want to show you right off the bat that is a little trick that I did is I printed out the schedule, which you should definitely do. And I actually cut out the little pieces of the schedule and glued them into my notebook next to my notes for that section or about that person. Here you can see something that I'm trying to kind of make my guiding principle this whole week. But look at my first drawing of John Muir Laws is pretty bad, right? I tried 2 more times though, at least. So just trying is really important. Here you can see I drew Tony Foster as well. That conversation was really fun. And really good. But right now I'm going to go into a couple tips that I highly recommend just briefly. Being intentional, setting up what your intentions are to get out of the event if you're going. And then being active, not passive. So if you're watching someone else talk for an hour or watching someone else do a class, that's not going to really help your learning. So as much as possible, try to be active, even if it's just a talk. Here I tried to draw Tony Foster. He's naked below the water. It was an amazing story about his mosquito bite scabs getting bitten off by fish and feeling joy in that moment. I could have just passively been enjoying that story and that would be fine. But really, this is the chance for nature journaling. This is a chance for sketching. And at the very least, you could be doodling on paper. So just getting used to making marks on paper. Even better than doodling, obviously, would be sketchnoting. So sketchnoting is a super beneficial technique when you're trying to learn information. So while Ivea was talking, I tried to do a combination of images and words. You can see that sometimes it turns into mostly words, but I'm trying my best, trying to use symbols, and that will all help with my learning as well. So if you can, try to incorporate sketchnoting into your classes. There's going to be a whole class tomorrow on sketchnoting with Kate. It's not going to be until the afternoon. So don't wait until that. That's almost halfway through the conference. Don't wait until that moment to learn about sketchnoting and start doing sketchnoting. And sketchnoting is the kind of thing you might even be able to get your boss to pay for you to learn sketchnoting because it applies to everything. So I definitely recommend not just watching the videos, try to at least be doodling. Now's your chance to practice making marks on paper and not worrying about the outcome. So don't get precious about your journal at this point in the conference. This is your chance to, like this page, for example, it doesn't really look that great, but that shouldn't be how I'm judging myself. I should be judging myself on filling paper and engaging with the material and trying to learn, engaging with the material in as many ways as possible, courageously and actively engaging with the material. That these instructors have put a lot of effort into bringing this material to us. The next little tip is consistency of entries. So I just said the visual part doesn't matter, and don't worry about your polished pages or whatever, but having some amount of consistency with your metadata, for example, is super important. And that's why I am just cutting out these little things from the schedule and pasting them into my nature journal. This is one of my new favorite nature journaling tools. You can get glue sticks anywhere in the world. And so I've been cutting these out. Here you can see I even cut out the pencil miles and chill, stuck that in, and then I stuck in telling stories with shadows. And so for every class, I'm just basically using that as the metadata, cutting it out and sticking it in. So having some consistency around like, here is a class, here is another class. That's a good technique for nature journaling in general. And you can use that for something like this. Maybe you have a certain way you always draw the instructor, and every time at the beginning. So like here's Melinda, for example. If all of my instructors, I have this simple drawing of them, and then I have up here, I paste in the name of the class, that would be a good example of consistency. So consistency, it's not a sexy sounding word, but it's actually super important in art and in nature journaling. Wow, there's a ton of people here right now. This might be one of the biggest lives I've ever done. So I'm gonna send a little bit of love to the people over here in the live chat. I see Ivea's here, Sandra's here, Susanna's here, Jack is here. Someone on Facebook is here that I'm not totally sure who it is. Tamara's here, Crystal's here, Tina's here, Jaxie is here. So many people on here. Thanks for joining in on the live. And remember, this is for people who aren't able to go to the Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference, or people who just want, at the end of the day, they kind of want a summary of some of the classes. That's one of the benefits of this that I'm doing every day. So the two classes at the beginning, there was the talk with Jack and Tony Foster. I already showed you the little sketch of Tony Foster in the water with the fish biting his scabs off. I thought that was really great. And then Ivea's class about stewardship, which is awesome. And by the way, Ivea is probably, as far as I know, basically the world leader, the leading expert in the world on combining nature journaling with ecological restoration. And I predict that is going to blow up in the future. And currently Ivea, I think, is doing it way more than anyone else, and really developing nature journaling as an applied strategy to amplify the effectiveness of a tool such as ecological restoration, which is super awesome. So definitely go check out that class if you didn't see it. Then right after that was shadows, a really, really challenging class for me. I quickly realized that my ability to kind of make up shadows for something didn't work at all. So as soon as she took away the drawing or the photo of this bug, I was not able to draw the shadows, but I learned a lot. That class was definitely a stretch for me. And it was also just really fun to see how Robin works and to try to imitate her process a little bit. So that was really great. Melinda's class was really good for anybody who wants to learn how to incorporate more birds into your nature journal, and not just relying on the pretty picture. So one of the quotes from her that I really liked was, "Drawing is only one of the many ways to catch birds on your pages." So there's a lot of ways to catch birds on your pages. I have little quotes like that from everybody, but I'm not going to go through all of them because it will take forever, and I'm barely going to stay up because I missed my nap, because I've basically been in back-to-back classes all day long. I didn't want to miss anything. So after Melinda's, did I already talk about Pencil Miles and Chill? One other thing, I noticed that during Pencil Miles and Chill, I took a screenshot of this, but during Pencil Miles and Chill, there was only like 400 people there. And I know that people need to eat and stuff like that, but I do want to point out that Pencil Miles and Chill is one of the things you're not going to be able to watch or participate in after this conference is over. And it's also the only thing besides the backstage pass in the evenings. Those are the two things where there's a whole group of people talking and you can see everybody else, and it's more community conversation. So I definitely recommend not missing those. And those are going to be every day at the same time. So Pencil Miles and Chill is always going to be in the middle of the day. And then the backstage pass is going to be after the keynote every day in the evening. And those are things that if you miss them now, you're not going to be able to get them later. Okay, so after Melinda, there was a little bit of a switcheroo. So this is the closest thing we have to any drama happening. And I hope that Mike Rohde is okay. I don't know the details, but Mike Rohde was not able to come sort of at the last minute, and Jack had to do, best substitute teacher ever, by the way. Jack had to do the class on composition and layout. And I wrote here, no worries, I could do that in my sleep. This drawing of Jack didn't come out that great either, but I'm trying to just practice drawing people. So the class about composition, highly recommend learning about composition and layout. If you really want to see Mike Rohde teach, you can check out, I did an interview with him. If you just search on YouTube, sketchnoting and nature journaling, it should come up. Jack also has on his website, he has a blog post about sketchnoting and nature journaling. And I believe it's with a class that Kate Rudder taught. I think it was 2016, Kate Rudder taught a nature journaling sketchnoting class for Jack. So definitely check that out. But his class today is the one you'll be able to find on the recording, Jack's. And it was really good. I think that learning more about composition and layout is one of those things that you can learn that will have the biggest impact on the way your pages look. And then here you can see my sticker for the last thing. And this is the keynote with Rosemary Moscow was amazing. So funny. I can't believe how funny her comics are. So I didn't do a ton of sketchnoting during her talk, but just really enjoyed it. It was amazing, and she is so funny. And I think comics are another thing that have a lot of potential crossover with nature journaling. A couple last tips that I'm going to go through here is coming up with metadata for when you are doing something online. So if you're doing nature journaling out in the field, you put the weather and all these different things, coming up with a consistent sort of icon or stamp or entry or metadata that you can use when you're participating in something online would be really useful to have. And then coming up with notes and symbols that are meaningful for you. So this is something I'm going to talk about later. But for example, one thing that I try to do is I try to make these little boxes, these little squares like that when it's something that I need to follow up on. So like, for example, if someone Ivea mentioned her investigative tools checklist, and I didn't download that before the class, and I want to go back and look at it because it's a really great tool. So I have certain marks that I will make that it's something I want to follow up on. So when I'm taking notes during someone's talk, I can remember to follow up on that. So that's one good technique I recommend. You can come up with a lot of different systems. Another thing that I want to talk about, and I'm going to try not to go on to a rant about this, but if you're attending the conference, please be really respectful about using the Q&A. I noticed there was some rather rude and off-topic things coming up in the Q&A. So try to think. Sometimes we're in the online environment, and I know I do this. I get excited and I post things in the comments or in the chat before I really think it through. So since we're in a webinar with 1,000 people, there's a Q&A box, but that's not a chat box. So try to think about your questions. And one thing that I do is while the instructor is talking, I create on my nature journal page, I start writing down my questions. So instead of immediately typing it into the Q&A box, I write it down on my page. And then later on in the talk, I might get the answer to some of those, or I might decide that's not the best question to use up the speaker's time. So if you're asking questions about like materials that the teacher already made available on the sched to download before, or if you're asking things or saying things that are totally unrelated, try to be intentional and think before you do that, because what can happen is the instructor can get distracted. And for example, I noticed this was happening a lot during the shadow workshop. Multiple times, Robin said, don't ask her about the colors. I even made a little comic about it. She said multiple times, don't ask me about what colors I'm using, because she intentionally wanted people to experiment with their own colors, but people kept asking her over and over again about what colors, and that was sort of distracting for everybody else. You also might just be able to Google it. So if you have an instructor who's been preparing, I'm sure Robin has put dozens and dozens of hours into preparing this class. She's an expert. She's trying to stay focused on the thing. It's great to ask questions. I love questions. But if it's a question that you can just look up on Google, just open a little tab on the side or write it down and look it up later on Google. You don't have to ask it in the Q&A and distract the instructor. So that's just a little bit of rant there. Okay, so on that note, being prepared, try to read the schedule and the materials the night or the day before. So for example, I think tomorrow there's a couple classes. I know I printed out a bunch of stuff this morning because I knew some classes are going to require things to be printed out. So try to do that all in advance and read about it in advance and check your email, because the instructors might have sent stuff via email. So try to do that. And let's see. That was pretty much it for today. I recommend having a lot of snacks on hand, doing some food prep in advance. Another bonus tip that I have is get a kneaded eraser. And you can use your kneaded eraser just to have something in your hand like this while you're sitting for long periods of time, trying to watch people talk about different nature journaling topics. I'm going to check in here. Ooh, this is great. I love this idea. A magnifying glass is such a great symbol, and it totally makes sense as a symbol to use for something to look up later. Here's a good one, but dangerous. Draw a little money mark next to something you want to buy, or like materials you want to buy. Very interesting. Thanks for sharing those. Oh yes, I can totally relate to this. I was fangirling super hard during the keynote as well. I love everything that Rosemary is doing. Okay, I think I'm going to call it off there to make sure that I get at least 5 hours of sleep tonight before another full day tomorrow. Thanks for joining in. I'm going to try to do this every night just as a recap in case you missed anything. You can also ask me questions. So like, for example, tomorrow night, when I'm doing the recap, if you have a question about any of these classes, you can just post it in the comments. Ask me any questions about any of the classes that maybe you missed, anything about any of the different instructors. Maybe I have some information about them, and I'll try to cover it in that conversation. All right, thanks a lot. My brain is sort of dying at this point in the evening, and I'm running out of my chocolate already, and we're only one day in. Okay, everybody, good night. Bye. See you tomorrow.